I'd like for everybody to introduce themselves in the comment or in the chat section. So at the bottom, you'll see the little chat bubble, and tell us where you're calling in from, your name, and who you work for. So something like, hello from Portland, Luke here from Neighborhood Partnerships. So go ahead, and I'm going to give you a couple seconds to type in your introduction. All right, so that for practical purposes, it avoids us having to go around for like 15 minutes and awkwardly be interrupting each other. It also allows the host to save. There's a setting where you can save the meeting chat, and I can go back and look and see who was at the meeting. That can be the way that you might track attendance, and it encourages participation from the beginning. So encourage you all to use and get familiar with the chat feature. There is another way to record who's present, but you have to have people register through Zoom for Zoom to capture a meeting attendance. So that did come up in the questions from people. I think saving the chat is maybe a relatively easy way to record who is in attendance. If somebody new does join, they're not going to see all the previous chats. Their chat is going to be blank. So it's just good to note that as the host as well. So I'd like to acknowledge the barriers and frustrations that come with this type of work. We've all been forced to figure it out. There are some barriers that we're not going to be able to address today or help with. Internet connectivity is an issue, especially in rural parts. I mean, I even had to upgrade my internet service last week because it was just not cutting it for my meetings. So that is a barrier that people are going to struggle with, especially in rural parts. The other issue is just not having the tools. So clients not having computers, maybe not having, if they have a desktop, they don't have a microphone to go along with it. So that's also not something we're going to be able to address, other than encouraging you to do things that are mobile friendly, that can work on a cell phone. The last thing that we will address today that came up is just frustration using the technology. So that's what our focus is going to be today, is hopefully helping you feel more comfortable with this technology so that you can engage people, and it can be a successful way to engage your clients in the work that we're doing. So I am going to turn it over to Sarah, who works for Dev Northwest. Dev Northwest has transitioned to doing a lot of digital teaching, engaging clients kind of right from the start of this social distancing. So I'm going to let Sarah take some time to talk a little bit about the agenda first, and then later she's going to share a little bit about what Dev Northwest has done. So Sarah, go for it.
Awesome, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I'm here in PDX and I work for Dev Northwest. Today we'll be talking about, we'll be going into what cognitoforms are, and just a brief intro to that. We'll hear about what Dev Northwest is doing to help move clients to online engagement. We're going to be comparing different video conferencing platforms. One of those is Zoom. We will talk about the basics of how to plan and host a Zoom webinar or meeting. And then we'll be talking about using some tools in Zoom, such as polling or in breakout rooms. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers.
Great, thank you. So as you already did with the group chat section, please insert your comments, questions, maybe suggestions there. If we aren't able to get to it by the end of the meeting, it'll be something that I can look back on and see if I have some answers to questions you might have had that didn't get answered. So I encourage everybody to use that chat feature during the meeting. As was mentioned earlier, using tools that are available for people that have only a cell phone a smartphone, I guess, with data is one of the things that is really key to make sure that the most people can access the tools that you're using. So Zoom is one of those that can be accessed via a cell phone on an app. One of the things actually I've done to learn is I have Zoom on my phone, and then I join my own meeting and I watch I watch my meeting from the cell phone. So if you really want to get familiar with the client's perspective, I encourage you to try that. Join on your phone, set up a meeting for yourself, and just play around with some of the features. So if you're new to using Zoom, that's an interesting way to kind of learn to facilitate something and you see what it looks like on a phone. So Cognito Forms is something that Neighborhood Partnerships uses a lot. So I'm going to launch our first poll, although I'm having technical difficulties, so I'm not going to be able to launch our poll. I guess another lesson is just be flexible. When things don't work out, just keep going. So wanted to know who has used Cognito. And the trick is you all used Cognito when you filled out the registration for this webinar. Because what I did is I created a registration form. It made a link, and I was able to share that link for people to register. So I'm going to share my screen right now where you all can see. Let me get. Okay, so here's the registration for this. So you can see what it looks like from the client's perspective when you build it. It is just a bunch of sections that you're creating content or questions. So many of them are, pretty standard: your name, email, organization. You can create a question with check boxes. You can insert open-ended questions where somebody can answer in sort of a sentence or paragraph format. You can insert a signature. So if you're trying to get something that has somebody verify that it's them, you can have a signature field. You can insert a file upload if you'd like somebody to take a picture of something that they've done. If they don't have the ability to scan or print, that's a way that you can collect documents via this file upload feature. And so when you publish it, again, you'll be able to see what it looks like. You'll be able to copy the link here and use that link then to send out. So it's something we use at Neighborhood Partnerships for collecting documents, for doing registration. I think there's even a way to have people pay for, if they register for a class and it costs money, they can use Cognito, and it is free for a single user. And there are features you can pay for, but it's a really practical tool that we've found useful, and we wanted to share that it's out there and we can explore it more with people if you're interested. So with that, that's it for the Cognito Forms, just demonstration, very short and simple. I'm going to turn it back to Sarah, who's going to talk a little bit about Dev Northwest's transition to digital learning and client engagement.
Thanks. So we were kind of lucky because we were already playing around with having webinars for some classes. So that was already something we were playing around with, and this happened. So we kind of had to move everything over to online engagement. So some of the things we did are we created Facebook Live web series. So every Tuesday at noon, we, Ross, who's actually in this meeting, he hosts a financial resilience web series at noon, and then at 12:30, it's in Spanish. And he goes over resources about COVID-specific resources. Last week, they talked about ways to save or spend your stimulus check. This week, they're talking about sharing activities and games to help your kids learn money skills while not in school. So it's a cool and free way for people to engage with us and know that we're still around, since as long as they follow us, they can look it up and it's free for everyone. So that's one way we have made people aware that we're still here and we're still sharing some good resources. Another way is we moved all our financial education classes to Zoom. So we have no in-person classes. So any time we have a class, it's on Zoom, and that actually has made us be able to have more classes because we are just working from home. And we also have co-teachers, so that's kind of cool. Something we haven't done before is there's 2 people teaching the class on Zoom. And for us, we mostly use the meeting format in Zoom because of breakout rooms. It really is more collaborative experience for the clients, so they still are able to do activities. And we'll talk about breakout rooms later, so you'll learn about that. Also, with coaching or counseling sessions, those are all on Zoom or phone. So if some people don't have access to internet or they just prefer the phone, we can call them and we'll just work through the appointment over the phone. I personally really enjoy the Zoom ones because we can still see face-to-face. And I can also share my screen so we can go over spending plan and their credit report or any resources they want to share. I can just share my screen and they can look at it with me. So it's been a little tricky. One thing we do is for Zoom, for any classes we have in Zoom, we send, or coaching appointments, we send an email before. And I always include some instructions for how to connect to Zoom. And I actually downloaded it from Zoom, so Zoom has that. And it shares how you can connect with like any device. So that's something that we have implemented just because not all of us are tech savvy. Yep, so we got a question, Zoom computer to phone. Yep, so anyone can connect for phone or computer and we can still see them. Yes. And that was it.
All right, thank you, Sarah. So again, if you have additional questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we can circle back around to those. So NP actually started using Google Hangouts Meet, which is another platform. So I'm going to share my screen again. There's a little chart that looks at some of the different platforms that are commonly used. It's not, extensive, but this is from Washington Nonprofits webinar that they hosted. And so they compare some of the features. You can see commonly people are looking for screen sharing ability, capacity, whether or not you can record, the price, and maybe some other features. So ultimately, NP switched to Zoom because of a few of the features. Similar to what Sarah said, the breakout rooms is really helpful when hosting a meeting and you want to split into small groups. There's also the polling feature that we've played around with. It's pretty easy to record and share meeting recordings. Something that Google Hangouts had that we did appreciate was closed captioning, which it also does say Zoom has closed captioning, but you have to type in what you want people to see. Google just automatically listens and types pretty accurately what is being said. So if that's something that somebody is looking for, we found that to be useful with Google Hangouts. But ultimately, we did stick with Zoom as our sort of go-to that we've been using. It does cost, I believe it's $15 a month for a user, and we share between several staff the same login, which means we can't schedule a meeting at the same time as somebody else. So there are some, scheduling needs that you have to figure out if you're sharing a login. Yeah, Zoom is what we have stuck with. So I'm going to show a few of the features when you are a host, kind of what the screen looks like. So here is, I took a screenshot of something so that I could sort of go back and reference it. But as a host, you are in charge of setting up the meeting and then controlling it when it's active, basically. So you will talk about the security features that are built in to try and avoid disruptions, and talk about how to manage some of the security, or manage some of the features as a host as well. So you can see here at the bottom, there's a few features that you have to enable for them to show up. So the polls is one down here. I'm going to try and figure out if I can draw on here. Sorry. Never mind. I'll continue on. So there's the polls feature. You can create a poll ahead of time in the scheduled meeting that you have, and then launch it when it's time. And there's the screen share, which if you have set to allow participants to share their screen, that's an option as well. So if you're in a meeting and any staff that are involved need access to share their screen, that's an option, or you can create it in a way that only co-hosts or hosts can share their screen. Here you have the recording button, you have the breakout rooms, and on the right side, you'll see once you click the manage participants icon here, you'll see the list of participants that show up, and you have the ability there to mute somebody or to sort of monitor who is on your call, as well as when you click the chat feature, you all will probably see that your chat opens up on the right side. There are, again, a security feature is to limit chats between participants, or not have chats at all if you're worried about having to monitor that. But if you have it open, people can chat each other privately or publicly to the group. So one of the things that people talk about is having Zoom bombing. So I'm going to skip ahead. When you click this security button down here, it'll pop up a list of options for you to select if you're trying to create some additional security. So some of them are related to not allowing new people to enter the meeting, so locking the meeting or enabling the waiting room. I'd kind of discourage people from using that if you're trying to make it as easy as possible for somebody to join your meeting. You probably don't want to create those extra barriers. I think the things that you do want to be aware of is how participants are interacting with your meeting. So here's where you can say you want to allow participants to share their screen or not, chat, rename themselves, and then ultimately you can remove a participant, which is kind of the most effective tool if you want to be prepared for somebody that's disrupting your meeting and you need to just get them off. You can remove them. When you click that remove, it gives you the list of your participants here on the right, and you can select who to remove. If, again, there's a bunch of settings that you can set, but if you remove a participant, you can make it so that that participant cannot rejoin the meeting once they've been removed. So those are some of the basic security features that you can enable for your meetings to have a little bit more control if you're worried about disruptions. Back to some general managing of a meeting, if you want to share your screen, you click on the share screen icon that's at the bottom in the middle, and it'll pop up this window, which is all the tabs that you have open on your computer. So you can select either one of those tabs to show just that on your screen, or you can select this first one on the top left where it's just your screen. Anything you're looking at will then show the participants. So you saw when I was starting the meeting, if you were here early, I was trying to figure out the right song to play. It auto played somewhat of a bummer, and so I felt like I ought to switch it up to something more more upbeat. So when you're sharing your screen, anything you're doing on your screen is going to be viewable to the participants. You can also just share individual documents. Another feature that we will test out are the breakout rooms. So when you click the breakout room at the bottom, it'll pop up this question where you're assigning however many participants are in your meeting to the number of rooms. So you can increase that to, I'm not sure what the limit is, but you can set a bunch of different rooms, and you can either manually sort people into different meeting rooms, or you can just have it automatically assign people to a room. So when we do this later, I'm just going to have it automatically assign people, and I'm probably going to shoot for 4 to 5 people per room, and then have it do it automatically. It'll then send people an invitation to join their room, and when the room is closing, it'll give people a minute warning before the room closes and everybody comes back to the main room. So I think that is some basics for when you are managing a meeting. I'm going to check if there's, yeah, so there's a question about Zoom security breaches and data sharing. We have not been terribly concerned because it feels like the meetings that we're hosting are not particularly private or confidential. I think, you know, potentially doing client coaching, there could be some confidentiality, but if you're doing a one-on-one with somebody, it's pretty evident whether there's a third person that has joined the meeting. And again, potential security breaches if you've recorded the meeting and you have it, or it has the ability to be shared. But I feel less concerned about the security of Zoom if I'm not doing something super confidential. And again, if it's one-on-one, it feels pretty evident when somebody else is there. There could be some hacking that I don't know about, but that's my opinion. Sarah, do you want to speak to it all, whether you all have had a need to do any additional security features with your meetings?
Yeah, so we have not had any security issues come up, but we have made everyone in the company aware that that could be a possibility. And we just shared tips about like Luke was saying earlier, having a password or enabling a waiting room. Again, as he also said, that also inhibits some people from joining. It doesn't make it easier for participants to join, but if it's a company meeting, then we enable a waiting room. So it's not a big concern of ours.
Daniel Lechuga is asking if he can make a suggestion. Would you like to go, Daniel?
Yes. How's everybody doing today?
Good, thank you.
Good. Hey, look, so my suggestion is this. The point that you brought up as far as what's on the desktop is really crucial and really important because of privacy issues. Plus, everybody's desktop sometimes is a little more cluttered than someone else's. So what I would recommend is, one second, my recommendation is most people are using Windows, that you create a separate profile on your computer with a Zoom on there, and you just click on that profile. That way, what's on your desktop is just blank and a couple of files that maybe you're going to be sharing with a client or something like that. That way, nothing else, because you don't have to, we all have our setup, the way we like it, especially like on the bottom with our links and stuff like that. So by going to the second separate profile, it's just blank, bare bones. It's just a one-on-one and no distractions in any way. That's just a suggestion.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think that's being aware of what's on your desktop is a big, I think a big key if you're going to be sharing your screen. So thank you for that suggestion. So I'm going to share my screen again here, and I'm going to show you all when you're going to set up a meeting. Again, this is probably directed at people who have not really used Zoom before. If you're really familiar, this is going to be, everything that you already know. But if you have not set up a Zoom before or not really hosted a meeting, I'm going to just walk you through so that, you feel like, it's manageable, it's doable, because it really is, it's something that everybody can learn if you have the technology available. It takes a few steps, and I think you'll get comfortable as you practice with clients. So you can your Zoom main page, you can join a meeting, which it's going to ask you for the meeting ID. Typically when I join a meeting, I'm joining from a link. So I don't even go to this page, but from the main screen, your option is to join a meeting, schedule a meeting. When you click schedule a meeting, this is kind of the one page that's the most useful, I think, for you as a host. This is your account profile. We mentioned security settings and other, if you want to adjust the settings over here on the left, this is how you would enable yourself to save the chat feature, to add some additional security. There are defaults that if you change them, it'll give you a little indication here that you changed it from what is the default. So I'm saying here, when I schedule a meeting, I want the default to be that the host video is on from the start, and same with the participants. And again, you can change many of these defaults. There's the audio type, allowing people to join before the host. So if it's a staff meeting, and everybody that's joining, I'd say you probably want to allow people to join before the host so they're not stuck waiting for you to start the meeting. There's lots of other questions. You can go down the page and look one by one and ask yourself, do I want this setting to be on or off? And maybe do a Google search if you're not sure what it means. But for the most part, the settings are default set to sort of your basic use. On the left here, you have meetings or webinars, and that's again something that Sarah mentioned. Webinars are a feature that we don't pay for, but if you're doing larger groups, classes, it really does help you control a little bit more the sort of the quality of what's happening, as well as the interruptions that might come from a participant who is not muted or is there to cause a disruption. So meetings, again, is what we use for the most part. You'll see a long list of the meetings that you have scheduled already. If you schedule a new meeting, it'll pop up this page, and I'll just schedule a test meeting. You don't have to put a description, put a date and time, the duration. You can choose whether it's a recurring meeting or if it's just one time. If it's a recurring meeting, it'll be the same link for everybody to join week after week. Here's where you can require registration, but that means people have to go register through Zoom for the meeting that you have scheduled. So I don't use that just to avoid that extra step. All these other questions is just, whether you want a meeting password, again, that might be an extra layer of security you can add for anything that's more confidential. But if it's not confidential, if it's open to the public, you probably just want to make it as simple as possible and not have a password. Then all these defaults, again, it's going to ask some of the same questions that were asked on the settings. Do you want to enable to join before the host? Do you want to mute participants when they enter? Do you want a waiting room, which means somebody sort of sits in the waiting room till you allow them in? Then there's some other questions it asks you. So you can save it then, and it'll kick you to the next screen, which is once you've scheduled a meeting, you can now add it to a calendar. You can copy the meeting invitation. So if I just copy the invitation here, and I can always come back to this screen, it's going to give you this whole long meeting invitation that you can copy and paste somewhere. I think another reason we felt like Zoom was working really well is the Outlook calendar. Once you schedule a meeting, you can click on the Outlook calendar and it'll send the calendar invitation down here as a download on the bottom left of your screen. Once you click on that meeting invitation, it'll connect to your Outlook calendar. And here's where you can invite attendees to join your meeting. It'll give you all the information that it typically gives, which I find to be kind of confusing, the amount of information that these meeting invites include. So one of my suggestions for if you're working with a client and you want to make it as simple as possible, you don't need all this stuff. You might just leave one phone number in case they want to dial in by phone. You probably need to leave the meeting ID, because if they dial by phone, then they have to press their meeting ID, and the link to the Zoom meeting. And you can, again, change this as well to be more personalized. So it doesn't look like spam. You know, it can be invited directly to people. But again, Outlook is also not necessarily the email platform that a lot of clients use. So your other option is Google Calendar. I've had some trouble with Google Calendar. When you click on it, it's going to have you sign into a Google account. So I have a bunch of different sign-ins. If I click the wrong one, it's going to tell me it can't find that calendar invitation. So the trick with making it work with your Google Calendar is that you have to have your calendar connected to your Zoom account. And then when you click this Google Calendar, it'll automatically add it to your calendar. And again, there's a little bit of a challenge making sure when we're sharing users to make the Google Calendar feature work for us. So we use Outlook, we save it on Outlook, and then you can use the information that's provided in the calendar invite to send to somebody, or you can, again, copy the invitation. When you're ready to start the meeting, you can just click on the link as the host. It'll automatically start the meeting, or you can go down here to start the meeting. Here's where you can add polls. So if I want to add a question for this class, I would add a poll. I can enter a title. I can ask my question, and then I can make it single choice or multiple choice. And that'll create a question to then prompt the class with. So it's going to save it here. I can also just do that automatically from the meeting. I can make a question and launch it during the meeting. But it's really helpful if you have multiple questions, if they're, you know, complex questions that you have thought about it ahead of time. So that's sort of how you prepare for using the polling. If you're the host and polling or breakout rooms don't show up on your on the bottom of your screen, that means you have to go into the settings. I believe it's somewhere on this page where you enable those features so that as the host, you then have access to do breakout rooms or polling. As a participant, You don't have to pay for an account. I hope you can communicate that to people. It's again something that somebody can use on their phone. They're going to have to download an app and create an account, but it does not cost anything. It feels like if you're able to help somebody get connected via Zoom or Google Hangouts or another video conferencing, it's going to take some time maybe to support them to get started. But once they figure it out, it's actually a great help to have provided somebody, the support to know how to get connected to something like a Zoom meeting. So hopefully they'll be able to use that skill then as they're trying to, set up additional meetings or join additional meetings. That while it may be the first time that a client is using it, I'm guessing if this pandemic continues for as long as they say it might, this will be something that more and more people are going to benefit from knowing how to use. So if you have any other questions, I have my son with me from outside my window here, so I better wave back. Please put them in the comments, and I'm going to give just a little bit of time to address any questions that come up. If no question is a dumb question. This webinar is especially for people who feel like so frustrated by this technology. You're stuck at home and nobody's there to help answer your questions. Please ask your questions, and I'm going to review my notes and see if there's anything else that I haven't addressed yet. How do you link Cognito forms to Zoom? Okay, great question. And how do you set up a meeting ID were two questions that came up. So I will share my screen again. So when I set up a meeting, so I'll go to today's meeting, I can click on it, and because I created it, it has automatically generated my meeting URL here. So once you create a meeting, that's the link that you use to tell people this is how you get onto this meeting. And again, the more times you can support somebody in finding that link, if you have a class or a one-on-one, and you suspect somebody might not know how to join the meeting, send them the link, with some instructions, maybe text them the link, make it as easy as possible for somebody to join, to find that link, because most likely it got lost, buried under a bunch of other emails. So make it as easy as possible. Now, I'll show you for Cognito, the way that I connected Cognito form to the Zoom is first I created the Zoom meeting. I had the link, and when I built the Cognito form, Cognito asks you when somebody submits, they press this submit button, they're going to get this message here. So I typed in a message that they would get, and then they're going to get a confirmation email. So down here, there's notification emails which come to me as the organizer of the Cognito form. It'll tell me somebody signed up. The confirmation email, I can click on it. It's going to say, okay, Neighborhood Partnerships is going to send an email to the person that just registered, and it's going to send it to their email address. So the key is in the registration, you have to ask for somebody's email address, and then that Cognito form confirmation goes to their email address that they just signed up with. You can create the subject, and then you can create the message. So I created a message with a reminder of the date and time and the link. Also, I added, so I said, click here to save the calendar invitation, your Outlook calendar. I hope that worked for people. If it didn't, let me know. The Google Calendar, again, was having problems, I think. I'm not sure how to make that work in this format. But here, this is a link to the calendar invitation file. So I'll show you how to find that file. Again, this is getting a little bit in the weeds, but it could be helpful if you're creating a registration and then having somebody sign up, or once they register, if they're already signed up, then they have the link as the confirmation. So in the meeting information, when you click this Outlook calendar button, it sends the download here. That's a link. So if I right click on that Outlook calendar link, I can say copy link address, and it's copying that calendar invitation. So if I copy that address and I put it into my browser, I paste it, it just sent the calendar invitation as a download, an ICS file, I guess is what it's called. And then here's the calendar invitation. So if it worked for you all, it means my process worked. Where you put in that link that is copied off here, off this button, that link is the calendar invitation. And again, that's only if somebody uses Outlook Calendar, that's going to be helpful for them. If they don't use Outlook, that process might not be helpful. So let's answer some more questions. If I only want 10 participants and my invitation goes to more, how do I limit participants? Within Cognito, I think you just have to close the form. I'm not sure how to set a limit. Maybe Ross or Sarah know that also use Cognito, but I'm not sure how to set a limit on participants other than closing the form, making it inactive for new users. So music question, was my music playing on your computer or in the background? So yeah, the music is kind of nice to have going at the beginning, so there's not just a bunch of awkward silence. What I did with that is I shared my screen and I clicked that button that said share computer audio. So I'll go back to this. So on this, when you click share your screen, down here is the checkbox to say share computer sound. If you check that, then music that's playing on your computer is going to be broadcast throughout your call, no matter if you're sharing that screen or not. So I shared my screen, I clicked share computer sound, and then I selected, oh, sorry. I selected the agenda to show. So you don't have to show the screen that is playing the music. It just has to be on your computer. Any additional questions? So my polling, I was going to demonstrate the polling, but it's giving me a message that says you are logged in from another device. Your polling session is inactive. So that may mean that one of my coworkers is also using the same account, and for some reason that didn't allow my polling to use. So that was a error I didn't know was possible. So as we do these things, we learn what works and what doesn't work. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to split people up into breakout rooms. And we have 26 participants. So I'm going to make 6 breakout rooms. And this is a chance to share with each other either, frustrations that you've had or what's worked. I'd also like to hear, people share with each other kind of what's encouraging about this new way of working that maybe was surprising. What have you seen as a new opportunity? I think people mentioned it in the registrations that there are opportunities, there are things that are positive coming out of this shift to a lot more, digital connection. And I'd just like to hear people share with each other your experiences. And we're not going to report back to the whole group since there's a lot of us, but we're just going to let it be a chance to share with each other. And then I'll bring us back when we just have a few minutes left. So we'll take about 5 or 6 minutes in breakout rooms. So I'm going to create the rooms. I'm going to open them, and you can select, tell it you want to join the room that you're invited to.
And then you can allow them to come back in to the
Yeah.
meeting. But using a smartphone, because that's what David and I were talking about, there's a lot of people that might not have like a computer or very reliable internet service. Because if they have decent, if you even do Wi-Fi as well, like if you park outside of McDonald's or something, because they have the free Wi-Fi in Starbucks as well. So those are just little pointers for people, because you can still do a one-on-one meeting with your smartphone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks. Okay, thanks for coming back, everybody. So I've been told the breakout room countdown is stressful, and it looks like somebody got cut off. It's a very passive-aggressive way to say time to come back, or maybe it's just straight up aggressive to kick people out. But anyways, there's no easy way to end good conversation. I'm going to have Sarah finish out by just talking about how they do evaluations at the end of class, just to share, it's important to gather feedback from people. And so what does Dev Northwest do for evaluations at the end of a class?
Yeah, so there's kind of a fun way to do it if you're doing a webinar. And that is, let me share my screen. Maybe.
I had to just allow participants to share their screen, so you should be able to do it now.
Okay, awesome. So let me schedule webinar.
Also, Katie, nice background. You went to the beach. Oh, Suzanne went to the beach too. There is a very fancy virtual background feature on Zoom.
Okay, so webinars. We actually create templates, so it's kind of cool. You can save polls and that's a good way. So at the end, bottom here, when you say branding, no. Okay, mine's not showing it, so I'll just tell you. Okay. So the host of a webinar has the ability to change the post attendee URL. It normally takes you just to a Zoom website, but you can actually make it go to Cognito Forms. So just under account management in webinar settings, you can, next to post attendee URL, you can click in your Cognito form URL. Or since we use meetings, we just have a slide that looks like this, and it's the link to our class evaluation form on Cognito Forms. And an easy way to do it, I just copy and paste it into the chat. And we like to give people like 5 minutes during our actual class to make sure that they go and actually fill it out. So we get feedback, because sometimes if you wait till after class, people forget and you don't get much feedback. So that's just an easy way for people to do it during class, and then you can just say, let me know when you're done, and then move on. So that's a really easy way to do it.
Great, thank you.